You didn't skip leg day. Leg day skipped you. 3 days later, your legs still feel like concrete, your knees hate you, and training again feels impossible. But what if soreness isn't proof of a good workout? What if it's proof you picked the wrong one? There's a leg exercise that gives the same muscle activation without destroying you, and almost nobody uses it. Every time you descend into a heavy squat, your body does something automatically. You take a deep breath, lock it in, and brace as hard as you can. That's called the Valsalva maneuver. And during a heavy squat, the pressure inside your abdomen skyrockets, far higher than during almost any other exercise. It's the only way your body can protect your spine under that load. But here's the problem. That same pressure squeezes the main vein that returns blood back to your heart. Less blood goes in, which means less blood gets pumped back out. So when you finish the set and finally breathe again, there's a brief moment where your brain isn't getting the blood flow it expects. That's why your vision goes fuzzy. That's why you see stars. And that's why squats leave you feeling drained in a way no other leg exercise does. And this matters even more when you realize something most people never think about. Your legs hold the largest blood vessels in your entire body, which means when you load them heavy and restrict blood flow at the same time, the stress isn't just muscular, it's systemic. And that's only the first thing squats do to your body. Feeling sore after squats isn't random, it's measurable. Inside your blood, there's a marker called creatine kinase. Think of it as your body's damage alarm. When muscle fibers get torn up, this stuff floods into your bloodstream. In healthy, trained lifters, normal levels sit low and stable. That's your baseline. But after heavy squats, those numbers don't just rise, they explode. Trained lifters see levels jump more than 10 times higher than normal. People who don't train regularly, even worse, nearly 20 times higher. And here's the part almost nobody knows. Those damage markers don't peak the next day, they peak 3 to 4 days later. That means when you think the soreness is fading, your muscles are actually experiencing their highest level of internal damage. And it doesn't fully return to normal for up to a week. So if you're training legs once a week, feeling destroyed, and wondering why progress feels slow, this is why. You're not undertraining, you're over-damaging. And it gets even more frustrating when you realize something else the research uncovered. Here's the part that sounds fake until you see the data. When both of your legs work together at the same time, each leg produces less force than if it worked alone. This is called the bilateral deficit. In simple terms, your nervous system can't fully fire both legs at once. When they're working together, each leg becomes weaker than it would be on its own. Researchers have measured this repeatedly, and the results are consistent. Each leg produces anywhere from 7 to 25% less force when trained bilaterally, like in squats, compared to unilateral or alternating movements. Think about that for a second. You're dealing with dizziness. You're dealing with extreme muscle damage. You're dealing with long recovery times. And on top of all that, your legs aren't even firing at full capacity. So when someone says squats are the king of leg exercises, the real question is, king of what? Because from a neurological standpoint, your legs are literally being held back. And once you understand that, the next part changes everything. Because there's an exercise that bypasses this problem entirely. And it explains why it builds legs without destroying them. This is where everything finally makes sense. Researchers started asking a simple question. Is it possible to train the legs just as hard without the dizziness, spinal stress, and week-long recovery that comes with squats? So instead of loading weight vertically on the body, they tested an exercise that applies force horizontally. Heavy sled pushes. In one controlled study, trained lifters pushed a sled loaded to roughly 75% of their body weight. Not light, not conditioning work. Real hard effort. Multiple heavy sets, just like a serious leg workout. Afterward, researchers measured the exact same muscle damage markers we talked about earlier, the ones that spike after squats and stay elevated for days. And this time, something shocking happened. There was no increase at all, no delayed damage, no massive spike, no lingering soreness waiting to show up 3 days later. Then they looked at recovery time. Instead of needing 72 hours or more to feel normal again, these lifters were fully recovered in about 3 hours. Let that sink in. Same intensity, same effort, same muscles. but a recovery window that's measured in hours instead of days. And to make sure this wasn't just a feels easier illusion, scientists measured muscle activation directly using EMG, the gold standard for seeing how hard a muscle is actually firing. The results were clear. Quad activation during heavy sled pushes matched back squats almost perfectly. And calf activation was often higher because every step forces you to drive through the ball of the foot. So if the muscles are working just as hard, why doesn't your body get wrecked? Because the stress goes where it belongs. With squats, the load sits on your spine. Your lower back has to stabilize hundreds of pounds. Your core locks down, blood pressure spikes, and one small technical mistake can shift stress away from the legs entirely. With sled pushes, there's no axial loading, no bar compressing your spine, no single weak link limiting the movement. Your legs generate force, your heart keeps normal blood flow, and your nervous system doesn't get slammed into survival mode. That's why you can push brutally hard without feeling crushed afterward. That's also why this exercise scales so well. Beginners can use it safely, and advanced lifters can load it heavy without risking their back. But here's the catch. Most people still don't get the benefits because they do it wrong. And once you understand the correct setup, the difference between just pushing a sled and actually replacing squats becomes obvious, which brings us to exactly how to perform this exercise so your legs do all the work and nothing else steals the tension. Most people think sled pushes are simple. Walk up, push, done. And that's exactly why most people don't get the results. Start with your setup. Grab the vertical posts or handles on the sled, whatever your gym has. Your arms should be almost completely straight, not locked, but close. Think 95% straight. Your arms aren't here to push, they're just connecting your body to the sled. Next, lean your entire body forward into it. Imagine you're about to sprint and someone yells, "On your marks." That's the angle you want, roughly 45 degrees. Your weight should be on the balls of your feet, like you're on your tiptoes with your heels just barely kissing the ground. This keeps constant tension on your quads and calves with every step. Now your head position. Pick a spot on the floor about 10 feet in front of you and keep your eyes there. Don't look up, don't stare at your feet. That neutral head position keeps your spine stable and prevents you from standing too upright. Now comes the part that actually matters, the push. You're not shoving the sled forward with your arms or leaning harder with your upper body. You're driving the ground away with your legs. Drive one foot into the floor as hard as you can, like you're trying to punch a hole through it. That single step moves the sled forward about a foot. The moment that foot finishes pushing, the other foot comes forward and does the same thing. Step, drive, recover, repeat. Think of it less like pushing a sled and more like walking it forward under load, one powerful step at a time. Now here's the mistake that ruins everything if you ignore it, your core. Before you start moving, take a breath and brace your abs like someone's about to punch you in the stomach. Then keep that tension the entire set. This does two things. It protects your lower back, and it transfers all that leg power directly into the sled instead of letting your body collapse. If your arms are burning, you're pushing with your arms. If your lower back hurts, you're too upright or not bracing. When it's done right, your arms feel almost nothing, and your legs feel everything. And once the technique is locked in, the next question becomes obvious. How heavy should this actually be? Because that's where most people go way too light and completely miss the point. This is where most people mess it up. They treat sled pushes like conditioning. They go light, they move fast, and they turn a leg-building tool into cardio. Here's the rule that fixes everything. If you can jog with the sled, it's too light. You should be moving in a slow, deliberate march, one powerful step at a time. Think about pushing a car that ran out of gas. That's the effort level you want. Start with this simple benchmark. Load the sled with your body weight. So if you weigh 180 pounds, put 180 pounds on the sled. From there, adjust up or down until each step feels heavy, controlled, and forceful, not rushed. For each set, push the sled 15 to 20 yards. That distance is long enough to create serious tension, but short enough to keep power high. Do 4 to 6 total sets, resting 2 to 3 minutes between each one. You should feel ready for the next set, not destroyed. And here's where this changes everything. Because recovery happens in hours, not days. You're not limited to once-a-week leg day anymore. You can do this 3 to 4 times per week. Let that sink in. Instead of annihilating your legs once a week and spending the next 6 days sore and avoiding them, you're stimulating growth multiple times while staying fresh. That frequency is what drives results. And sled pushes aren't just easier on recovery. They're brutally effective because every single session actually contributes to progress instead of digging a recovery hole. But sleds aren't always available, and even if they are, variety matters if you want long-term growth. So what happens if your gym doesn't have a sled, or you just want more options that work the same way? That's where the next part comes in, and this is where people really start questioning everything they thought they knew about leg training. Sled pushes are incredible, but they're not always available. And even if your gym has one, smart training means having backups that hit the same muscles without changing the recovery equation. The first one surprises almost everyone. Incline walking. I know, it sounds too easy to matter. But when researchers compared flat walking to incline walking, the difference wasn't small. Once the incline hits 10% or higher, glute activation jumps by over 300%. Not 30, not 50, over 300. Every step forces you to drive your body upward against gravity, which lights up your quads, calves, and glutes. Without impact, without joint stress, and without soreness that lingers for days. Set a treadmill to 12 to 15%, walk for 20 to 30 minutes, and keep a pace where you're breathing hard, but still able to talk. You can do this almost every day, and your knees will thank you. Now here's the one that really messes with people's expectations. High-resistance cycling. Track cyclists have some of the biggest quads in sports, and many of them never touch a squat rack. And it turns out you don't need to be an athlete to get the benefit. Studies on older men, not lifters, not cyclists, showed that 12 weeks of progressive cycling led to measurable quad growth. But this wasn't cardio. The resistance was cranked high, and the cadence was slow. Around 40 to 60 revolutions per minute. Every pedal stroke felt like pushing against weight. Here's how you do it. Crank the resistance up. Pedal slowly and hard for 30 seconds. Rest 90 seconds. Repeat for 8 to 10 rounds. Your quads will be on fire, but just like sled pushes, the muscle damage stays low, so recovery stays fast. And the final option is for when you want the most bang for your time. Hill sprints. Incline walking activates muscle. Sprinting recruits fast twitch fibers, the ones most responsible for size and power. Sprint uphill for 10 to 15 seconds, walk back down. Do 6 to 8 total sprints. That's it, 10 minutes. The incline protects your joints, the sprinting spikes muscle-building hormones, and you get a stimulus that normally takes a full leg workout without the fallout. Now the obvious question is, how do you put all of this together into a week that actually builds legs instead of just exhausting them? That's the final piece. And it's where this approach completely separates itself from traditional leg day. Leg training doesn't have to leave you wrecked to work. When you stop chasing pain and start training in a way your body can actually recover from, growth happens faster and more consistently. If you want to apply this same idea to the muscle group that changes your physique the most in a shirt, there's a video on the screen right now that breaks it down step by step. Don't miss that one.